You call that a business? More like a charity case. Vanessa's laughter cut through the dinner party like glass, sharp and dangerous. Our parents nodded along, champagne flutes catching the chandelier light as 20 of their closest friends pretended not to notice my humiliation. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply closed my laptop, tucked it under my arm, and walked out of our family home for what I thought was the last time. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 2 months later, my phone lit up with 17 missed calls, from the same people who couldn't even remember the name of my company. Now they're desperately trying to reach me. Funny how quickly worthless becomes worth calling when the tables turn. It started on a Thursday evening at my parents' waterfront, home in Bellevue. The place always felt more like a showroom than a home. Italian marble countertops that no one was allowed to set a glass on without a coaster. Cream-colored sofas that had never known the weight of a lazy Sunday afternoon. My sister Vanessa stood at the center of it all, holding court in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I'd only come because my parents insisted. It's an important networking event, Maya. You could use some connections. What they really meant was, your sister is announcing her promotion and you should be there to clap for her. So I came, wearing the nicest outfit I owned, which according to my mother's subtle once-over when I arrived, wasn't nice enough. For the first hour, I hovered near the kitchen island, nibbling on catered appetizers and nodding along to conversations about vacation homes and stock portfolios. No one asked what I was working on. No one remembered that I'd left Chen Innovations 6 months ago to start my own company. I was just Richard and Elaine's other daughter, the one who wasn't Vanessa. I might have made it through the entire evening unnoticed if my laptop hadn't chimed. I'd been waiting for a response from a potential client, the kind of response that could mean making rent next month, so I quickly opened it, trying to angle the screen away from the party. That's when Vanessa glided over, glass in hand, perfect eyebrows raised. Working at a party, Maya? That's so dedicated. The way she said it made it sound like a disease. Just checking something, I said, already closing the laptop. Let me guess, another one of your little accessibility apps? She turned to her audience, 3 of my father's business associates and their wives. My sister thinks she's going to revolutionize tech for people with disabilities. So noble, right? I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Horizon Solutions isn't just about accessibility. We're developing adaptive interfaces that can... Horizon Solutions, my father interrupted, testing the name like an unfamiliar food he wasn't sure he wanted to swallow. Is that what you're calling it now? What happened? What was it last year? Adaptive Tech Ventures, my mother supplied helpfully. Or was it Inclusive Systems? It was Access Innovations, I said quietly, and I changed it because it wasn't innovative enough to get funding, Vanessa laughed, and several people joined in. Face it, Maya, you've been trying to launch a startup for what, 3 years now? 6 months, I corrected. Before that, I was building the accessibility division at Chen Innovations. You know, the one that brought in the Morrison account? My father waved his hand dismissively. A small government contract, hardly worth the resource allocation. It was $1 million contract, I said, but no one seemed to hear me. Vanessa's smile sharpened. Let me see what you're working on. Maybe I can offer some advice. Before I could react, she lifted my laptop screen. My dashboard was open, showing my client list, small, my revenue projections, smaller, and my bank balance, smallest of all. Vanessa let out a theatrical gasp. Oh, sweetie, you call that a business? More like a charity case. She turned the screen so others could see. Look at these numbers. You'd make more money running a lemonade stand. The room filled with polite laughter. Not the kind that comes from genuine amusement, but the obligatory chuckles of people who know that's what's expected when the golden child makes a joke. "Vanessa," my mother said weakly, but her tone held no real rebuke. "My sister wasn't finished. You know what the difference is between us, Maya? I understand business, real business." She gestured around the room at my father's colleagues. "These people respect success, not sentimentality. Your little pet project might make you feel good, but it's never going to succeed. Not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur." That's when she dropped the bombshell that would change everything, though I didn't know it yet. "Speaking of real business," Vanessa announced, raising her voice to address the room, "I have some exciting news. Chen Innovations is looking to expand, and I've identified the perfect acquisition target. Westlake Systems." My heart stopped. Westlake Systems, the company whose email had just chimed on my laptop. The company that had finally, after weeks of negotiations, agreed to a partnership with Horizon Solutions. Their accessibility API would be integrated with my adaptive interface. This deal was going to save my company. "We're in final talks now," Vanessa continued smugly. "By this time next month, Westlake will be a Chen subsidiary, and I'll be heading their entire division." She smiled directly at me. "See, Maya? That's how you grow a business." I felt the room tilt slightly. Everything I'd been working toward was about to be swallowed by my sister's ambition. If Chen Innovations acquired Westlake, my partnership deal would almost certainly be terminated. Vanessa would make sure of it. I closed my laptop with a soft click. The sound barely registered amid the congratulatory murmurs filling the room. My father clapped Vanessa on the shoulder, his face alight with the kind of pride I'd never seen directed at me. "That's my girl," he said, always thinking big. I stood there, clutching my laptop to my chest like a shield, feeling smaller by the second. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I walked out. No dramatic exit, no tearful goodbye. I simply slipped away while everyone was focused on Vanessa's moment of triumph. The cool evening air hit my face as I stepped onto the patio. Seattle's skyline glittered across the water, a constellation of possibilities that suddenly seemed very far away. I made my way down the stone path to the driveway, each step taking me further from the family that had never seen me clearly. As I reached my car, a practical Honda that looked out of place among the luxury vehicles, I heard footsteps behind me. "Maya, wait." It was Uncle James, my father's older brother, the family outlier who'd retired early from the company to pursue his own interests, the only one who ever asked about my work with genuine curiosity. I turned, keys dangling from my fingers. "I'm just heading out. Not really in a party mood." Uncle James's eyes were kind behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "I heard what happened in there. Your sister has always had a flair for the dramatic." I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance but probably landing closer to defeat. "She's right, though. My numbers are pathetic. Numbers don't tell the whole story." He stepped closer, lowering his voice though no one else was around. "Did I ever tell you why I left Chen Innovations?" "Dad always said you wanted to pursue other interests." Uncle James chuckled. "That's a polite way of saying I got tired of watching good ideas die because they didn't fit the Chen profit model." He nodded toward my laptop. "What you're building has value beyond a balance sheet. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thanks, Uncle James, but I think tonight made it pretty clear where I stand in the family hierarchy. Always the odd one out." "Being the odd one out isn't always a bad thing." He squeezed my shoulder. "Your grandmother was the odd one out too, you know. Never quite fit in with the Chen way of doing things. But she built something lasting." His eyes twinkled with a secret I didn't yet understand. "Sometimes the quiet ones surprise everyone in the end." I gave him a weak smile and got into my car. His words were kind, but kindness wouldn't save my company from Vanessa's hostile takeover. As I drove away from the house, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Uncle James stood in the driveway, a solitary figure watching me leave. I didn't know then that it would be the last time I'd see him. 2 weeks later, Uncle James passed away suddenly. Heart attack, they said. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The family gathered for a somber funeral where my father spoke stiffly about brotherhood and legacy. Vanessa wore an appropriately somber black dress and managed to mention her upcoming acquisition of Westlake Systems while accepting condolences. I sat in the back row, genuinely grieving the one person who had seen something in me worth believing in. After the service, a stern-looking woman in a charcoal suit approached me. "Maya Chen? I'm Patricia Hendricks, your uncle's attorney. Could you stop by my office tomorrow? There's a matter we need to discuss." I nodded, confused but curious. Uncle James and I had been close, but not close enough that I expected to figure in his will. Probably some small keepsake, I thought. A book from his collection. Maybe his old telescope. Nothing prepared me for what actually awaited. The next day, I sat in Patricia Hendricks' meticulously organized office as she slid a folder across her desk. "Your uncle made some significant changes to his will 6 months ago," she explained, her expression giving nothing away. Most people didn't know this, but James Chen was Westlake Systems' majority shareholder. I blinked, trying to process this information. Uncle James owned Westlake? Through a series of shell companies and investments, yes. He preferred to keep his involvement anonymous. "Corporate politics," he said. She adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Chen left specific instructions regarding his shares." She opened the folder and turned it so I could see the document inside. There, in clear legal language, was the impossible. Uncle James had left his controlling interest in Westlake Systems to me. "There must be some mistake," I whispered. "No mistake, Ms. Chen. Your uncle was very specific. He also left this for you." She handed me an envelope with my name written in Uncle James's distinctive handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. "Maya," the letter began. "If you're reading this, 2 things have happened. I've left this world a bit earlier than planned, and you've discovered that you now own what your sister wants most. I've watched you build something meaningful while the rest of the family was busy building empires. I've seen your dedication to creating technology that actually helps people, not just shareholders. Westlake Systems began with the same mission, but lately it's been drifting toward more profitable ventures. I'm trusting you to steer it back. You don't have to run it. You have your own vision with Horizon Solutions. But as owner, you can make sure it doesn't become just another cog in the Chen machine. They'll try to buy you out. They'll try to pressure you. Stand firm. You're stronger than they know. Much love, Uncle James." I read the letter twice, then looked up at Patricia, who was watching me with newfound interest. "How many people know about this?" I asked. "Just you, me, and the Westlake board, who were informed this morning. Your uncle's instructions were to handle this discreetly. The public announcement isn't scheduled until next week." Next week. After Vanessa's big announcement about the acquisition that could no longer happen without my approval. "Ms. Chen," Patricia said carefully, "I should mention that your sister's company has already made a significant offer to purchase Westlake. The board forwarded it to me this morning. They're expecting a response." I thought about my laptop screen, displayed for everyone to mock. I thought about years of dismissive comments and belittling glances. I thought about charity case, and not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. "Tell them the new owner is considering all options," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "No decisions will be made until next week." I left the attorney's office in a daze, the folder tucked securely in my bag. Seattle's perpetual drizzle had turned to proper rain, but I barely noticed as I walked to my car. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from my mother. "Family dinner Sunday. Your father insists you attend. Vanessa has big news. I bet she does, I thought, but didn't reply. For the next few days, I lived in a strange limbo. I went to my small office in a shared workspace, answered emails, held video calls with clients, all while sitting on information that would change everything. No one from my family called to check on me after I'd walked out of the dinner party. They only reached out when they wanted something, in this case, an audience for Vanessa's triumph. On Sunday evening, I pulled up to my parents' house exactly on time. No earlier, eager, no later, dramatic. Just punctual enough to be unremarkable. I'd dressed more carefully than usual, a simple but elegant black dress that even my mother couldn't find fault with. My laptop stayed in the car. I wouldn't need it tonight. Dinner was a smaller affair than the party, just my parents, Vanessa, her husband Derek, who worked in finance and had approximately the personality of a credit report, and me. The conversation revolved around Vanessa's upcoming acquisition, with my father asking detailed questions about integration plans and market positioning. The Westlake board is being a bit difficult, Vanessa admitted, cutting into her salmon with surgical precision. They were supposed to sign off on Thursday, but suddenly they're reviewing all options. She made air quotes with her fingers. Nothing I can't handle, though. Perhaps they received a better offer, I suggested mildly, taking a sip of water. Vanessa laughed. Not likely. We're offering well above market value, and there aren't many companies that can absorb Westlake's infrastructure. Besides, I have inside information that the majority shareholder wants to sell. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. Who's the majority? Shareholder? Some silent investor who's worked through proxies for years, my father answered. Very secretive, but apparently looking to cash out. Interesting, I murmured. Anyway, Vanessa continued, I've called a press conference for Wednesday to announce the acquisition. It's practically a done deal. She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You should come, Maya. See how the big leagues operate. I set down my fork. Actually, I have my own announcement. The table fell silent. My mother looked alarmed, as if I might announce I was joining a cult. I've been doing some research on Westlake Systems, I said. Did you know they originally specialized in adaptive technology for visually impaired users? Ancient history, Vanessa dismissed. They pivoted to enterprise solutions years ago, much more profitable. Yes, but that accessibility framework is still buried in their code base. It's actually what makes their enterprise solutions so flexible. I took another sip of water, feeling strangely calm. That's why I approached them about a partnership last month. Vanessa's fork clattered against her plate. You what? Horizon Solutions and Westlake Systems. We signed a partnership agreement last week. Their accessibility API will be integrated with my adaptive interface. My father frowned. Why wasn't I told about this? Why would you be told? I countered. Horizon isn't part of Chen Innovations. This is ridiculous, Vanessa snapped. Whatever tiny deal you've made, it won't stand once we acquire the company. I'll dissolve it immediately. That might be difficult, I said, given that I'm now Westlake's majority shareholder. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, marking the seconds of their stunned disbelief. That's not possible, Vanessa finally said, her voice tight. We've been in discussions with the owner for weeks. You've been in discussions with the board, who didn't have authority to sell without the majority shareholder's approval. I looked my sister directly in the eyes. Uncle James left his controlling interest in Westlake to me. It was finalized on Thursday. My father's face flushed dark red. This is absurd. James owned tech stocks, not entire companies. Apparently, there was a lot about Uncle James you didn't know, I said quietly. He believed in my vision for Horizon Solutions. He saw value in what I was building when the rest of you saw a charity case. You need to sell those shares to us, my father demanded. This is clearly a mistake. James wasn't thinking clearly. Actually, his will is quite specific. I have full discretion over the shares. I pushed my chair back from the table. And I've decided that Westlake will be partnering with Horizon Solutions, not being acquired by Chen Innovations. Vanessa's composure finally cracked. You can't do this. Do you have any idea how much work I've put into this deal? The promises I've made. This could ruin my reputation. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. I knew what it was like to have dreams crumble. But then I remembered her laughter as she displayed my struggling finances for everyone to see. The years of dismissal and belittlement. The casual cruelty, disguised as honesty. I'm sorry you're disappointed, I said, not unkindly. But business is business. Isn't that what you've always told me? I stood up, smoothing my dress. I should go. I have an early meeting tomorrow with the Westlake board. We're discussing a new direction for the company, focusing on accessibility solutions for enterprise clients. Turns out there's a huge untapped market there. My mother finally found her voice. Maya, please, we're family. Surely we can work something out. I paused at the doorway, looking back at them. My father seething, my mother distraught, Vanessa staring at me as if seeing me. For the first time. I'm still the same person I was 2 weeks ago, I said softly. The only thing that's changed is that now you have to see me. I left without another word, walking to my car with measured steps. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just drove away. The Seattle skyline bright against the night sky, no longer a distant constellation, but a map of possibilities within reach. The next day, my inbox and voicemail were flooded. 17 missed calls from my family. First angry, then cajoling, finally desperate. Vanessa's press conference was 2 days away. The business journals were already running speculative pieces about Chen Innovations' expansion. My father had apparently called every business contact he had, trying to find legal grounds to challenge the will. None of it mattered. The documents were ironclad. Uncle James had been very thorough. I sat in my small office, soon to be relocated to a proper headquarters, and opened my laptop. The screen that had once displayed my meager finances now showed a different dashboard. Westlake Systems' organizational structure, with a new accessibility division highlighted in blue. Horizon Solutions was listed as a strategic partner, with our joint projects already mapped out for the next 18 months. My phone rang again. Vanessa. I considered letting it go to voicemail like the others, but something made me answer. Maya. Her voice sounded different, smaller, less certain. We need to talk. I'm listening, I said. A pause. Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the Westlake Center? There's a coffee shop on the ground floor. I agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because I knew this conversation needed to happen eventually. An hour later, I spotted Vanessa at a corner table, her designer handbag occupying the chair across from her like a shield. She wasn't wearing her usual power suit, just jeans and a sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger, more like the sister I remembered from childhood, before competition had calcified between us. I sat down across from her, moving the handbag to the floor. Neither of us spoke for a moment. I had to cancel the press conference, she finally said. The company is running damage control. Dad is... She trailed off. Furious? I supplied. Beyond furious. I've never seen him like this. She fidgeted with her coffee cup. He said James betrayed the family, that you betrayed the family. By existing? By succeeding? The bitterness I'd tried to contain seeped into my voice. What exactly is my betrayal here, Vanessa? Building something you all mocked? Inheriting something you wanted? Not fading conveniently into the background? She flinched. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. 2 weeks ago, you humiliated me in front of everyone. You called my business a charity case. You've spent years making sure I knew I wasn't good enough, smart enough, Chen enough. I didn't, she started, then stopped. I didn't realize how it affected you. Bullshit, I said quietly. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just never expected it to matter. Vanessa stared into her coffee. What are you going to do with Westlake? Exactly what I told you last night. Refocus on accessibility solutions, integrate with Horizon's interfaces, and target enterprise clients who need flexible, adaptive systems. I leaned forward. It's a billion-dollar market, Vanessa. One that Chen Innovations has ignored because it requires specialized knowledge and innovative thinking, not just acquisition and assimilation. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe even a reluctant respect. You've really thought this through. I've been thinking it through for years. No one was listening. The silence between us stretched, filled with the ambient noise of the coffee shop and years of unspoken resentments. I'm not going to sell to Chen Innovations, I said finally, but I am prepared to offer something else. Vanessa looked up sharply. What? A true partnership. Not an acquisition, not a takeover. Westlake and Horizon will develop the accessibility solutions. Chen Innovations has the distribution channels and client relationships we need. We work together as equals. Dad will never agree to that. Then I'll find other partners. I shrugged. But it would be more profitable for everyone if we collaborated. Vanessa studied me with new eyes. When did you become so strategic? I've always been strategic. You just weren't paying attention. I stood up, gathering my bag. Think about it. Talk to Dad if you want, though I suspect you're the one making decisions now that your big acquisition fell through. Let me know by Friday. I turned to leave, but Vanessa's voice stopped me. Maya, wait. She hesitated. I'm sorry for what I said at the dinner party, for a lot of things. I looked back at her, this sister who had been both my tormentor and my impossible standard. I know, I said simply. Then I walked away, not in retreat this time, but toward something I was building, something worth believing in. 3 months later, I stood at a podium in the Westlake Systems headquarters, announcing our new joint venture with Chen Innovations, Adaptive Enterprise Solutions. Vanessa stood to my right, her usual polished self, but with a new caution in how she addressed me, the careful respect of a business partner rather than the dismissive tolerance of a superior sister. My parents sat in the front row, still processing this new reality where their other daughter was suddenly front and center. My father had initially refused the partnership, just as Vanessa predicted. But when 3 major clients expressed interest in our accessibility solutions, the businessman in him overrode the prideful father. He hadn't apologized. I didn't expect him to. But he had shown up, and in the Chen family, that was its own kind of acknowledgement. As I outlined our vision for technology that served all users, not just the mainstream, I spotted a familiar face in the back of the room. Zoe Williams, my former colleague who had been the first to believe in Horizon Solutions. She gave me a subtle thumbs up, and I felt a surge of gratitude for the people who had seen my worth before it came with a price tag. In conclusion, I said, addressing the room filled with journalists, tech workers, and business leaders, this partnership represents not just a business opportunity, but a philosophical shift. We're not just building accessible technology. We're making technology that's better for everyone because it's accessible. The quiet innovations often make the loudest impact. The applause was gratifying, but it wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the email I'd received that morning from a small assistive technology nonprofit, thanking us for the grant that would help them serve visually impaired users in underserved communities. What mattered was that Uncle James's belief in me hadn't been misplaced. What mattered was that I had built something lasting, not out of resentment or revenge, but out of the conviction that had sustained me even when no one was looking. Later, as the crowd mingled at the reception, a young programmer approached me nervously. "Ms. Chen, I just wanted to say, your work on the adaptive interface is why I applied to Westlake. I have a brother with motor control issues and your building could change his life." I smiled, thinking of all the times my ideas had been dismissed as unmarketable or niche. "What's your name?" "Alex," they said. "I start in the accessibility division next week." I handed them my card. Simple. Elegant, with Maya Chen CEO printed in raised lettering that could be read by touch. "Email me directly on Monday. I'd like to hear more about your brother's experience." As they walked away, clutching the card like a talisman, I thought about how much power lies in being seen, not for who others want you to be, but for who you actually are. My sister had spent years looking right through me. Now she was learning to look at me. The difference wasn't in me. It had always been in her perception. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from my banking app. The first major payment from our partnership. Deal had been processed. The same numbers that had once been mocked as pathetic now contained several more zeros. I closed the notification without showing anyone. I didn't need external validation anymore. Not from my family, not from my bank account. I had built something that mattered. More importantly, I had become someone who couldn't be erased. So tell me, have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? Have you built something valuable while others looked away? Leave a comment below, because the quietest journeys often lead to the most meaningful destinations. The cool evening air hit my face as I stepped onto the patio. Seattle's skyline glittered across the water, a constellation of possibilities that suddenly seemed very far away. I made my way down the stone path to the driveway, each step taking me further from the family that had never seen me clearly. As I reached my car, a practical Honda that looked out of place among the luxury vehicles, I heard footsteps behind me. "Maya, wait." It was Uncle James, my father's older brother. The family outlier who'd retired early from the company to pursue his own interests, the only one who ever asked about my work with genuine curiosity. I turned, keys dangling from my fingers. "I'm just heading out. Not really in a party mood." Uncle James's eyes were kind behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "I heard what happened in there. Your sister has always had a flair for the dramatic." I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance but probably landing closer to defeat. "She's right, though. My numbers are pathetic." "Numbers don't tell the whole story." He stepped closer, lowering his voice though no one else was around. "Did I ever tell you why I left Chen Innovations? Dad always said you wanted to pursue other interests." Uncle James chuckled. "That's a polite way of saying I got tired of watching good ideas die because they didn't fit the Chen profit model." He nodded toward my laptop. "What you're building has value beyond a balance sheet. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thanks, Uncle James. But I think tonight made it pretty clear where I stand in the family hierarchy. Always the odd one out. Being the odd one out isn't always a bad thing." He squeezed my shoulder. "Your grandmother was the odd one out too, you know. Never quite fit in with the Chen way of doing things. But she built something lasting." His eyes twinkled with a secret I didn't yet understand. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise everyone in the end. I gave him a weak smile and got into my car. His words were kind, but kindness wouldn't save my company from Vanessa's hostile takeover. As I drove away from the house, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Uncle James stood in the driveway, a solitary figure watching me leave. I didn't know then that it would be the last time I'd see him. 2 weeks later, Uncle James passed away suddenly. "Heart attack," they said. The family gathered for a somber funeral where my father spoke stiffly about brotherhood and legacy. Vanessa wore an appropriately somber black dress and managed to mention her upcoming acquisition of Westlake Systems while accepting condolences. I sat in the back row, genuinely grieving the one person who had seen something in me worth believing in. After the service, a stern-looking woman in a charcoal suit approached me. "Maya Chen, I'm Patricia Hendricks, your uncle's attorney. Could you stop by my office tomorrow? There's a matter we need to discuss." I nodded, confused but curious. Uncle James and I had been close, but not close enough that I expected to figure in his will. Probably some small keepsake, I thought. A book from his collection, maybe his old telescope. Nothing prepared me for what actually awaited. The next day, I sat in Patricia Hendricks' meticulously organized office as she slid a folder across her desk. "Your uncle made some significant changes to his will 6 months ago," she explained, her expression giving nothing away. Most people didn't know this, but James Chen was Westlake Systems' majority shareholder. I blinked, trying to process this information. Uncle James owned Westlake? Through a series of shell companies and investments, yes. He preferred to keep his involvement anonymous. "Corporate politics," he said. She adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Chen left specific instructions regarding his shares." She opened the folder and turned it so I could see the document inside. There, in clear legal language, was the impossible. Uncle James had left his controlling interest in Westlake Systems to me. "There must be some mistake," I whispered. "No mistake, Ms. Chen. Your uncle was very specific. He also left this for you." She handed me an envelope with my name written in Uncle James's distinctive handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. "Maya," the letter began. "If you're reading this, 2 things have happened. I've left this world a bit earlier than planned, and you've discovered that you now own what your sister wants most. I've watched you build something meaningful while the rest of the family was busy building empires. I've seen your dedication to creating technology that actually helps people, not just shareholders. Westlake Systems began with the same mission, but lately it's been drifting toward more profitable ventures. I'm trusting you to steer it back. You don't have to run it. You have your own vision with Horizon Solutions. But as owner, you can make sure it doesn't become just another cog in the Chen machine. They'll try to buy you out. They'll try to pressure you. Stand firm. You're stronger than they know. Much love, Uncle James." I read the letter twice, then looked up at Patricia, who was watching me with newfound interest. "How many people know about this?" I asked. "Just you, me, and the Westlake board, who were informed this morning. Your uncle's instructions were to handle this discreetly. The public announcement isn't scheduled until next week." Next week, after Vanessa's big announcement about the acquisition that could no longer happen without my approval. "Ms. Chen," Patricia said carefully, "I should mention that your sister's company has already made a significant offer to purchase Westlake. The board forwarded it to me this morning. They're expecting a response." I thought about my laptop screen, displayed for everyone to mock. I thought about years of dismissive comments and belittling glances. I thought about charity case and not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. "Tell them the new owner is considering all options," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "No decisions will be made until next week." I left the attorney's office in a daze, the folder tucked securely in my bag. Seattle's perpetual drizzle had turned to proper rain, but I barely noticed as I walked to my car. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from my mother. "Family dinner Sunday. Your father insists you attend. Vanessa has big news." I bet she does, I thought, but didn't reply. For the next few days, I lived in a strange limbo. I went to my small office in a shared workspace, answered emails, held video calls with clients, all while sitting on information that would change everything. No one from my family called to check on me after I'd walked out of the dinner party. They only reached out when they wanted something, in this case an audience for Vanessa's triumph. The rain continued unabated, Typical Seattle weather that matched my mood. Not stormy, just persistently gray, with moments of unexpected clarity. I found myself waking before dawn, making coffee in my small apartment kitchen, and sitting by the window to watch the city slowly illuminate. Each morning, I reread Uncle James's letter, tracing his handwriting with my fingertip. The words remained the same, but their meaning seemed to deepen each day. "You're stronger than they know." Was I? I'd spent so many years trying to prove my worth to a family that had decided my value long ago. Maybe it was time to stop seeking their approval and start claiming my own power. On Friday afternoon, I made my first move as Westlake's new owner. I called Marcus Rivera, the investor who'd expressed interest in Horizon Solutions but had been hesitant to commit. "Maya," he answered, surprise evident in his voice. "I was actually going to call you next week. I heard rumors that Westlake might be acquired, which could impact your partnership deal." "That's actually why I'm calling," I said. "The rumors aren't quite accurate. I've recently acquired controlling interest in Westlake Systems." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "You've what?" Marcus finally said. "It's a recent development, not public yet." I kept my voice casual, as if discussing the weather rather than a multi-million-dollar acquisition. "But it changes our previous conversation about investment in Horizon Solutions. I'm now in a position to guarantee the integration of our adaptive interface with Westlake's API." Another pause. "Maya, this changes everything. Are you free for dinner tonight? I think we need to recalibrate our discussion." We met at a small restaurant in Capitol Hill, far from the upscale establishments where my family conducted business. Over plates of handmade pasta, Marcus and I drafted a new investment agreement, one that positioned Horizon Solutions not as a struggling startup but as a strategic partner to an established company. "Vanessa Chen is going to be furious," Marcus said as we finished our coffee. He didn't sound concerned. If anything, there was a note of admiration in his voice. The acquisition of Westlake was supposed to be her big move. I shrugged. Family dynamics can be complicated. "The business world is watching," he warned. "This kind of corporate drama gets attention." "I'm not interested in drama," I said. "I'm interested in building something worthwhile." As I drove home that night, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The pieces were falling into place, not according to Vanessa's plan or my father's expectations, but in alignment with Uncle James's faith in me and my own vision. Saturday morning, I met with Patricia Hendricks again, this time to sign the final paperwork that would formalize my ownership of Westlake Systems. As she passed me document after document, each requiring my signature, the reality of my new position began to sink in. "Your uncle was very thorough," Patricia noted, watching me sign the last page. "He anticipated potential challenges from your family." "What kind of challenges?" "The usual. Claims of undue influence, questioning your capacity to manage such assets." She adjusted her glasses. Mr. Chen prepared extensive documentation of his decision-making process. He also recorded several video statements explaining his reasoning should anyone contest the will. I smiled, imagining Uncle James meticulously preparing for every contingency. He thought of everything. Almost. Patricia's expression softened slightly. "He didn't anticipate passing so soon. He mentioned plans to mentor you through the transition." The thought brought a fresh wave of grief. Uncle James should have been here, guiding me through this landscape he knew so well. Instead, I had only his letter and the memory of his confidence in me. "Ms. Chen," Patricia said, interrupting my thoughts, "I don't typically offer personal advice to clients, but in this case I feel compelled to make an exception. Your family will likely react strongly to this development. Be prepared for both legal and emotional pressure." I nodded. "I'm expecting resistance." "Not just resistance, potential retaliation." The The Chen family has significant influence in Seattle's business community. They're still my family, I said, though the words sounded hollow even to me. Patricia gave me a look that suggested she'd seen enough family disputes to know better. Just be cautious, and call me if you need legal support. I left her office with a folder full of documents that transformed me from Maya Chen, struggling entrepreneur, to Maya Chen, majority shareholder of a multi-million-dollar tech company. The weight of it pressed against my chest as I walked to my car, not heavy with dread, but solid with possibility. Sunday arrived with unexpected sunshine breaking through Seattle's cloud cover. I dressed with unusual care for the family dinner, a simple navy dress that projected quiet confidence rather than trying too hard. I styled my hair in a sleek low bun rather than my usual practical ponytail. Small changes, but they helped me embody this new version of myself, a version my family had never bothered to see. As I drove to my parents' house, I rehearsed what I might say when Vanessa made her big announcement. Should I reveal my ownership immediately, or wait for the perfect moment? Should I be conciliatory or firm? Every scenario I imagined ended with shocked faces and uncomfortable silence, none of which gave me much comfort. I pulled into the driveway, noting that everyone else had already arrived. My father's Mercedes, my mother's Range Rover, Vanessa, and Derek's matching BMWs. My Honda looked even more out of place than usual, but for the first time, I didn't feel embarrassed by the contrast. By tomorrow, everyone would understand that appearances didn't tell the whole story. My mother answered the door, her smile tight at the edges. Maya, you're here. We were beginning to wonder. I'm right on time, I said, checking my watch. We started drinks early. She stepped back to let me in. Your father wanted to toast Vanessa's news. Of course he did. I followed her into the living room, where my father was pouring champagne into crystal flutes. Vanessa sat on the sofa, Derek beside her, both looking polished and pleased. The perfect corporate couple celebrating their perfect corporate victory. There she is, my father said, handing me a glass. Nice of you to join us, Maya. I accepted the champagne with a neutral smile. Wouldn't miss it. We were just discussing the Westlake acquisition, Vanessa said, her voice practically bubbling with self-satisfaction. The press release goes out tomorrow morning. Does it? I took a small sip of champagne. 9 a.m. sharp, Derek added. The business journals already have the story under embargo. It's going to make quite a splash. Vanessa leaned forward, her competitive nature unable to resist twisting the knife a little. I heard your partnership with Westlake might be affected. Such a shame after all your hard work. But that's business for you. Survival of the fittest. I looked at her over the rim of my glass, suddenly calm in a way I hadn't expected. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about Westlake. Oh? Vanessa's eyebrow arched with mild interest. Having second thoughts about your little partnership? You're welcome to apply for a position at Chen Innovations, you know. I could always use someone with your specialized knowledge. The condescension in her voice would have stung just days ago. Now it felt almost comical, like watching someone strutting toward a cliff, unaware of the drop ahead. I don't think that will be necessary, I said. I'm quite happy with my current position. My father scoffed. Maya, be reasonable. That little startup of yours is barely breaking even. Vanessa's offering you a lifeline. Richard, my mother, murmured. Let's not start dinner with an argument. It's not an argument, my father insisted. It's simple business sense. Maya needs to recognize when she's beaten. I set my champagne flute on the side table. Actually, I think dinner is the perfect time to discuss business. Isn't that the Chen family way? Shall we? My mother led us to the dining room, where the table was set with the formal china reserved for special occasions. I took my usual seat, the one furthest from my father, where my opinions were easiest to ignore. Tonight, though, the distance felt strategic rather than isolating. Dinner progressed with the usual Chen family dynamic. My father dominated the conversation, with Vanessa as his eager second, while my mother occasionally tried to smooth over the more obvious tensions. Derek offered financial insights no one had asked for. I ate quietly, waiting. "So," Vanessa said as the main course was served, "I should give you all the full update on the Westlake acquisition. We're not just buying their technology, we're completely overhauling their business model." "Oh?" My mother passed the salad. "How so?" "Their current focus on accessibility tools is too niche. We'll be integrating their core technology into our enterprise solutions while phasing out the less profitable lines." Vanessa shot me a look that was almost sympathetic. "Which unfortunately includes the API that Maya was hoping to use." My father nodded approvingly. "Smart. No sense maintaining legacy products with limited market appeal." "Those legacy products help thousands of people with disabilities access technology that would otherwise be unavailable to them," I said quietly. Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Maya, we've been through this. Accessibility is a nice idea, but the market is too small to justify the investment. Business isn't about being nice. It's about making money." "And how much money do you project Chen Innovations will make from Westlake in the first year?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Vanessa exchanged a quick glance with our father. Financial details weren't typically shared with the other daughter, who couldn't possibly understand their significance. "The projections are confidential," she said finally, "but substantial." I nodded thoughtfully. "I imagine they would be, especially if you maintained the accessibility focus rather than dismantling it." "Maya," my father said with exaggerated patience, "I know you're passionate about this issue, but Vanessa has done the market analysis. The numbers simply don't support your position." "Actually," I said, "I've done my own analysis. The accessibility tech market is projected to reach $32 billion by 2027. It's not niche, it's underserved." Derek chuckled, the sound grating in its condescension. "That's a rather optimistic interpretation of the data." "Is it? Microsoft has invested over $25 million in adaptive technology. Apple's accessibility features are a core part of their development strategy. Google has an entire division dedicated to inclusive design." I looked directly at Vanessa. "These companies see the value, even if Chen Innovations doesn't. Those companies can afford to engage in charitable side projects," Vanessa dismissed. "We're focused on maximizing shareholder value." "And who exactly are Westlake's shareholders?" I asked. The question hung in the air, seemingly innocent but loaded with implication. Vanessa frowned slightly, sensing something off in my tone. "Their ownership structure is private," she said carefully. "But the board has approved our offer." "Conditionally approved," I corrected, "pending majority shareholder consent." Now, I had her full attention. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "How would you know that?" "The same way I know that Westlake's majority shareholder has different plans for the company's future." I reached for my water glass, taking a deliberate sip before continuing. "Plans that prioritize the accessibility technology you're so eager to dismantle." My father set down his fork with a sharp clink against fine china. "Maya, what are you talking about?" The moment had arrived. I could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the subtle redistribution of power that was about to take place. It wasn't about revenge or triumph. It was simply about finally being seen. "Uncle James left me his controlling interest in Westlake Systems," I said, my voice steady. "The paperwork was finalized yesterday. I am now Westlake's majority shareholder, and I have no intention of selling to Chen Innovations." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face flushed dark red. My mother's hand fluttered to her throat in shock. Derek froze with his wine glass halfway to his mouth. And Vanessa stared at me as if seeing a stranger. "That's not possible," she finally whispered. It's not only possible, it's legally binding. I met her gaze without flinching. Uncle James believed in what I'm building. He saw value where the rest of you saw a charity case. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. This is absurd. James would never make such a reckless decision. The shares should have gone to Chen Innovations, to the family. They did go to family, I said quietly. Just not the part of the family you expected. You have no idea how to run a company that size, Vanessa said, desperation creeping into her voice. You'll destroy everything Westlake has built. I don't plan to run it. I plan to partner with it. I turned to my father. Uncle James left detailed instructions and supporting documentation. Patricia Hendricks has it all. You're welcome to review it, but I promise you'll find everything in order. My mother finally found her voice. Maya, surely we can discuss this. Come to some arrangement that benefits everyone. I'm open to discussion, I said. But not to selling. Westlake's accessibility technology stays, and Horizon Solutions will be developing it further. Vanessa's composure cracked completely. Do you have any idea what you've done? The press release is ready to go. I've made promises to the board, to our investors. Then I suggest you call them tonight, I said, rising from my chair. Because tomorrow at 9 a.m., Westlake Systems will be announcing its new ownership and strategic direction, and it won't include acquisition by Chen Innovations. I walked out of the dining room, leaving my half-eaten dinner behind. No one called after me. No one tried to stop me. They were too shocked, too busy recalculating what this meant for their carefully laid plans. As I reached the front door, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. I turned to find Vanessa, her perfect composure replaced by genuine panic. You can't do this to me, she hissed. I've staked my reputation on this deal. The board is expecting results. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. I knew what it was like to have dreams crumble, to fear failure. I'm not doing this to you, Vanessa, I said gently. I'm doing this for all the people who need the technology we're building, the ones you were so quick to dismiss as too niche to matter. Since when do you care more about strangers than your own family? She demanded. I've always cared about both. You just never noticed. I opened the door, letting in the cool evening air. We could have been allies, you know. We still could be. Her laugh was brittle. Allies? After you've humiliated me? After I've shown you there's another way to do business. I stepped outside. Think about it, Vanessa. A partnership between Chen Innovations and Westlake, with Horizon as the bridge. We'd reach markets neither of us could access alone. She stared at me, calculation replacing anger in her eyes. Vanessa had always been adaptable. It was part of what made her successful. You're serious? Completely. Call me when you're ready to discuss terms, as equals. I walked to my car without looking back, feeling oddly light despite the heaviness of the moment. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibility. For the first time in my adult life, I was charting my own course, not fighting for scraps of approval from a family that had decided my worth long ago. As I drove away from the house that had never truly been home, my phone began to light up with notifications. First my father, then my mother, finally Vanessa. Each message more urgent than the last. I silenced the phone and kept driving, the Seattle skyline bright against the night sky. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, press statements, legal, documents, strategic decisions. Tonight, I simply wanted to breathe in the reality of having found my voice. I drove to the small park overlooking Lake Union, parked the car, and walked to the railing. The water reflected the city lights, distorting and multiplying them until they seemed infinite. Somewhere in that glittering landscape was Uncle James's apartment, now empty of his presence but still filled with his influence. I wished I could call him, tell him how it had gone, ask for his guidance on what came next. Instead, I pulled His letter from my purse and reread it one more time. His words now familiar but no less powerful. You're stronger than they know. For the first time, I truly believed it. Not because I'd outmaneuvered my sister or disappointed my father, but because I'd finally stopped measuring my worth by their standards. The strength Uncle James had seen wasn't about power or control. It was about vision and persistence. About building something meaningful when no one else believed it possible. As I tucked the letter away, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, assuming it was my family using someone else's phone to reach me. But curiosity won out. Ms. Chen, this is Alex Torres from the Westlake Development Team. The board just informed us about the ownership change. A group of us who've been working on the accessibility API would like to meet with you tomorrow if possible. We have ideas we've been sitting on for months. Ideas that just might align with what you're building at Horizon. I smiled into the darkness, typing a quick reply. 10 a.m. my office. Bring everything you've got. Tomorrow was going to be interesting, and for once, I couldn't wait to get started. Monday morning arrived with unexpected clarity. I woke before my alarm, made a strong cup of coffee, and sat at my kitchen table reviewing Uncle James's letter and the Westlake ownership documents. The reality was still sinking in. I now controlled the very company my sister was planning to acquire. The company that could either save or destroy what I'd been building. I dressed with unusual care, a structured blazer over a simple blouse, dark jeans rather than my usual faded pairs. Small changes that helped me embody this new role I hadn't asked for, but now had to fill. My small office in the co-working space felt different when I arrived. The same mismatched furniture, the same view of the parking lot, but something had shifted. I wasn't just Maya Chen, struggling entrepreneur anymore. I was Maya Chen, majority shareholder of Westlake Systems. The dichotomy was dizzying. You look different, said Raj, the UX designer who shared the space on Mondays and Wednesdays. Got a big client meeting? I managed a smile. Something like that. I settled at my desk and opened my laptop. First order of business. Understanding. Exactly what I'd inherited. I spent the morning combing through Westlake's publicly available financial reports, press releases, and product documentation. The picture that emerged was fascinating. Westlake had begun as an accessibility-focused company, developing tools for users with visual, motor, and cognitive impairments. Over time, they'd expanded into enterprise solutions, gradually shifting resources away from their original mission. Exactly as Uncle James had described. The potential was obvious. Their accessibility framework was still best in class, but underutilized. Combined with Horizon's adaptive interfaces, we could create something revolutionary, technology that was accessible by design, not as an afterthought. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. A Seattle number I didn't recognize. Maya Chen speaking. Ms. Chen, this is Robert Winters, chairman of the board at Westlake Systems. His voice was cautious, measuring each word. I understand from Ms. Hendricks that you're now our majority shareholder. That's correct, Mr. Winters. The board would appreciate an opportunity to meet with you. Perhaps this afternoon? My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. I'm afraid today won't work with my schedule. How about Wednesday morning? A pause. Ms. Chen, we have some time-sensitive matters to discuss, including the offer from Chen. Innovations. I'm aware of the offer, Mr. Winters, and I'll need more than a few hours to properly evaluate Westlake's current position before discussing any acquisition proposals. I pulled the corporate backbone into my voice that I'd heard my father use countless times. Wednesday at 10 a.m. would work for me. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear him reassessing who he was dealing with. Very well. Wednesday at 10. Our offices in South Lake Union. I'll see you then. I hung up before he could press further. My hands were trembling slightly. I'd just pushed back against a seasoned corporate executive, buying myself precious time to formulate a plan. It felt terrifying and exhilarating, all at once. I needed allies, people who understood Westlake from the inside. I opened my email and composed a message to the head of their accessibility division, a woman named Elena Martinez, whose name I'd spotted repeatedly in their technical documentation. Ms. Martinez, I'm Maya Chen, founder of Horizon Solutions, and now majority shareholder of Westlake Systems. I'd like to discuss the future of the accessibility framework with you, privately, before my meeting with the board on Wednesday. Are you available tomorrow morning? I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came within 20 minutes. Ms. Chen, I'd be happy to meet. 8 a.m. tomorrow at Analog Coffee on Capitol Hill? Less likely to run into other Westlake employees there? Perfect. I confirmed the meeting and turned my attention to preparing for the inevitable confrontation with my family. Sunday dinner was still days away, but Vanessa wasn't likely to wait once the Westlake board informed her of the ownership change. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone lit up with her name. I let it ring through to voicemail, then listened to her message. Maya, call me back immediately. I just got a very strange email from Westlake. We need to talk. Her voice was tightly controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. I didn't call back. Instead, I drafted an email to Patricia Hendricks requesting more detailed information about Westlake's current contracts and corporate structure. I needed to understand exactly what I was working with. By late afternoon, my inbox was flooding with information, financial statements, org charts, product roadmaps. Patricia had clearly anticipated my needs and prepared accordingly. Uncle James must have briefed her well. As I scrolled through the documents, a pattern emerged. Westlake's most innovative work was still happening in the accessibility division, but it was systematically being deprioritized in favor of more conventional enterprise products. The division was understaffed and underfunded, yet still producing remarkable results. My phone rang again. Vanessa, for the third time. I silenced it again and continued working. At 6 p.m., as I was preparing to leave, a sharp knock on the co-working space's glass door startled me. Vanessa stood outside, immaculate in a tailored suit despite the rain, her expression thunderous. I sighed and opened the door. How did you find me? Your website lists this as your business address, she snapped, striding past me. Her gaze swept dismissively over the modest space. Why haven't you returned my calls? I've been busy. Busy sabotaging my acquisition deal? What game are you playing, Maya? I closed the door, grateful that everyone else had already left for the day. It's not a game, Vanessa. Uncle James left me his shares in Westlake. It's as simple as that. Simple? She laughed, a brittle sound. There's nothing simple about this. James had no right to interfere in Chen Innovation's business strategy. Uncle James could do whatever he wanted with his shares. They were his. Vanessa paced the small space, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. Look, I understand you're upset about what happened at the dinner party. I shouldn't have made those comments about your business. But this is taking things too far. This has nothing to do with the dinner party, I said quietly. Uncle James made these arrangements months ago, before any of that happened. She stopped pacing. Then why? Why would he leave his shares to you instead of to the family company? Because he believed in what I'm building. He saw value in accessibility technology that the rest of you dismiss as niche or charitable. I met her gaze directly. And he didn't want Westlake's accessibility framework dismantled in another Chen Innovations acquisition. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. How did you know about that you plan to phase out their less profitable accessibility tools? You announced it at the dinner party, remember? Right after mocking my numbers. She had the grace to look momentarily discomfited. It was a preliminary plan. Nothing was finalized. Well, now nothing will be finalized. At least not the way you intended. Vanessa's expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. She'd always been adaptable. It was part of what made her successful. What exactly do you want, Maya? Money? A position at Chen Innovations? Name your price. I don't want to sell. Don't be ridiculous. You can't possibly manage a company of Westlake's size. You have no experience. I don't plan to manage it. I plan to guide its strategic direction, while letting the existing leadership handle day-to-day operations. I leaned against my desk. Starting with reinvigorating their accessibility division, not dismantling it. Vanessa shook her head. You're making a mistake. Father will never stand for this. Father doesn't have a choice. The shares are legally mine. I softened my tone slightly. Look, Vanessa, this doesn't have to be a war. There's another option. I'm listening. Partnership instead of acquisition. Chen Innovations handles enterprise distribution. Westlake maintains and expands its accessibility framework. Horizon Solutions bridges the gap with adaptive interfaces. She eyed me skeptically. And you'd be willing to work with us? After everything? This isn't about personal feelings. It's about building something worthwhile. I shrugged. Think about it. Run the numbers. See if they make sense for you. In the meantime, I have a board meeting to prepare for. I gestured toward the door, making it clear our conversation was over. Vanessa hesitated, clearly unused to being dismissed, especially by her younger sister. This isn't finished, she said finally. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. After she left, I sank into my chair, exhaling slowly. The confrontation had gone better than expected. I hadn't lost my temper. I hadn't backed down. I'd presented an alternative that might actually benefit all parties if Vanessa could get past her pride. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe, my former colleague who'd left Chen Innovations around the same time I did. Just heard about Westlake. Vanessa is losing it at the office. Call me. I smiled despite myself and dialed her number. Holy shit, Maya, Zoe said by way of greeting. Is it true? You own Westlake now? I'm the majority shareholder, I confirmed. How bad is the meltdown? Epic. Vanessa called an emergency leadership meeting. Your father flew back early from Vancouver. The PR team is working overtime to figure out how to explain the collapsed deal. I winced. That sounds chaotic. It's exactly what they deserve, Zoe said fiercely. After the way they treated your division? After taking credit for your Morrison contract? This is poetic justice. I appreciated her loyalty, but revenge wasn't my goal. I'm not trying to hurt the company, Zoe. I just want to build something meaningful without it being absorbed and dismantled. I know. Her voice softened. That's why you deserve this win. So what happens next? I meet with the Westlake board on Wednesday. Before that, I'm talking to Elena Martinez about the accessibility division. Elena's brilliant. She interned with us one summer, remember? Before your father decided accessibility work wasn't core business. I hadn't made the connection. You know her? We keep in touch. Want me to come to the meeting? Moral support? I considered it. Having a friendly face would help, especially someone who understood both sides of this situation. That would be great, actually. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. at Analog Coffee. I'll bring pastries. You're going to need the sugar. After we hung up, I gathered my things and headed home, my mind racing with possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt like I was playing a game I might actually win. Not because the rules had changed, but because I'd finally stopped playing by someone else's rules altogether. The next morning dawned gray and misty, typical. Seattle weather that somehow felt appropriate for clandestine business meetings. I dressed carefully again, professional but not corporate, a middle ground that represented Horizon Solutions rather than either Chen Innovations or Westlake Systems. Analog Coffee was busy but not packed when I arrived. I spotted Zoe already at a corner table, a box from Bakery Nouveau open beside her. She waved me over, pushing a cappuccino in my direction. I ordered your usual, she said. And chocolate. Croissants. Brain food. You're a lifesaver. I sat down, taking a grateful sip of coffee. Any more fallout after yesterday? Zoe leaned forward, lowering her voice. Your father called an all-hands meeting this morning. I got texts from 3 different people. Apparently, he announced that family matters were causing a temporary delay in the Westlake acquisition, but that the deal was still moving forward. I raised an eyebrow. That's optimistic of him. That's Richard Chen refusing to admit defeat. Zoe's eyes flicked to the door. Heads up, Elena just walked in. I turned to see a woman in her early 30s scanning the cafe. She had an angular bob, round glasses, and an air of contained energy. I raised my hand and she spotted us, making her way over. Maya, she confirmed, extending her hand. Elena Martinez. Thanks for meeting me, I said, gesturing to the empty chair. This is Zoe Williams. She used to work at Chen Innovations with me. In the ill-fated accessibility division, Zoe added with a wry smile. Before it was reprioritized out of existence. Elena's expression shifted from cautious to interested. You worked on the Morrison contract. Maya did, Zoe corrected. I just helped with implementation. Elena turned to me with new respect. That contract was groundbreaking. The adaptive navigation system was years ahead of the market. And promptly shelved once the contract was fulfilled, I said. Which is partly why I started Horizon Solutions. I couldn't stand seeing good technology abandoned because it didn't fit the Chen Innovations profit model. Elena nodded, a flash of recognition in her eyes. That sounds familiar. Westlake started as an accessibility-first company. Our founder was dyslexic. He built the original screen reader for himself. But over the past few years, she trailed off. The focus has shifted to enterprise solutions, I finished for her. Accessibility features repackaged as productivity enhancements for corporate clients. Exactly. My team keeps getting smaller while the enterprise division keeps expanding. Elena took a sip of her coffee. So when I got your email, I was intrigued. What exactly are your plans for Westlake, Ms. Chen? Please call me Maya. I leaned forward. I want to refocus on accessibility technology, but not as a charitable side project, as a core business strategy. Accessibility features make technology better for everyone, not just users with disabilities. That's a market advantage that Westlake, and Chen Innovations for that matter, has consistently overlooked. Elena studied me for a moment. And how would Horizon Solutions fit into this picture? Horizon has developed adaptive interfaces that could integrate seamlessly with Westlake's accessibility framework. Together, we could create a truly universal design system, one that adapts to each user's needs without requiring separate, accessible versions. A spark of interest lit Elena's eyes. Like the Morrison navigation system, but expanded to all digital interfaces. Exactly. I pulled out my tablet and opened a presentation I'd prepared overnight. Here's what I'm thinking. For the next hour, the 3 of us huddled over the tablet, discussing technical specifications, integration points, and market potential. Elena proved to be not just brilliant but pragmatic, pointing out potential obstacles and suggesting workarounds. Zoe contributed insights from her time at Chen Innovations, identifying potential resistance points and competitive advantages. By the time our coffee cups were empty, a viable strategy had emerged, one that preserved Westlake's core technology while expanding its applications through Horizon's adaptive interfaces. This could work, Elena said finally, an unfamiliar note of hope in her voice. But the board is focused on quarterly profits. They've been pushing us toward the acquisition because it's an easy win for shareholders. That's where I come in, I said. As majority shareholder, I have final say on the company's direction. But I'll need allies on the inside. I held her gaze. Will you help me convince the board that accessibility is a viable business strategy, not just a moral obligation? Elena didn't hesitate. Absolutely. I've been making this case for years. With you as the majority shareholder, they'll finally have to listen. I can help too, Zoe offered. I still have contacts at Chen Innovations who are frustrated with the current direction. If we can show that a partnership is more valuable than an acquisition, we might be able to bring both companies to the table. I felt a surge of gratitude for these women who believed in the vision without requiring proof of profit first. This was what Uncle James had seen in me, I realized. Not just dedication to accessibility, but the ability to build connections around a shared purpose. There's one more thing, Elena said, her expression turning serious. The board meeting tomorrow. Several members are closely aligned with Chen Innovations. They've been pushing for this acquisition for months. They won't be happy about the change. In plans, I'm expecting resistance, I acknowledged. More than resistance. Robert Winters, the chairman, has been particularly vocal about the benefits of joining the Chen corporate family. He has close ties to your father. That didn't surprise me. My father's business network was extensive and carefully cultivated. Any advice for handling him? Come prepared with numbers, Elena said promptly. Robert responds to data, not idealism. If you can show that your plan is financially viable, he'll at least listen. And dress for war, Zoe added. The boardroom is their territory. You need to look like you belong there. I nodded, mentally cataloging my limited wardrobe. Nothing I owned would match the corporate armor Vanessa wore so effortlessly. Zoe seemed to read my thoughts. Shopping trip this afternoon? I know a boutique in Belltown that can help. I can't afford. Consider it an investment in your company's future, she interrupted. First impressions matter, especially with the Westlake board. She was right, of course. This wasn't about vanity. It was about strategy. Okay, shopping trip it is. Elena checked her watch. I should get back to the office before anyone notices I'm gone. But I'll send you the latest development roadmap and user research. It'll help make the case for expanding rather than cutting the accessibility features. We exchanged contact information and agreed to meet briefly before the board meeting the next day. As Elena left, Zoe turned to me with an impressed look. You're really doing this, she said. Taking on both Westlake's board and your family in 1 week. Not by choice, I reminded her. Uncle James put me in this position. Because he knew. You could handle it. Zoe gathered our empty cups. He could have left those shares to anyone, Maya. He chose you for a reason. The reminder steadied me. This wasn't just about proving my worth to a family that had consistently undervalued me. It was about honoring Uncle James's trust and building something meaningful from the opportunity he'd given me. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Zoe and I spent 2 hours at the boutique, emerging with a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that somehow made me look both professional and distinctive. The price made me wince, but as Zoe pointed out, Vanessa probably spent more on a single pair of shoes. Back at my apartment, I spread the Westlake documents across my small dining table and began building my case. Financial projections, market analyses, integration timelines, everything I would need to convince the board that my vision was not just idealistic, but economically sound. My phone rang intermittently throughout the evening. My father, my mother. Vanessa again. I let them all go to voicemail, focusing instead on the task ahead. Whatever family drama awaited could wait until after the board meeting. As midnight approached, I finally had a presentation I felt confident in. It wasn't flashy like Vanessa's corporate decks, but it was thorough, data-driven, and compelling. It laid out a clear vision for Westlake's future, one that honored its origins as an accessibility innovator, while expanding its market reach through strategic partnerships, including but not limited to Chen Innovations. I sent the final slides to Elena for review, then finally checked my voicemails. My father's message was predictably confrontational. Maya, this childish behavior stops now. Call me back immediately to discuss terms for transferring those shares to Chen Innovations. My mother's was anxious and placating. Darling, please call us. Your father is very upset. I'm sure we can work something out that makes everyone happy. Vanessa's caught me by surprise. Maya, we need to talk. Not about the acquisition. About something else. Something important. Call me. The unusual tone in her voice made me hesitate. Against my better judgment, I called her back. She answered. On the first ring. Finally. It's late, Vanessa. What's so important? Not over the phone. She sounded tense, almost nervous. Can you meet me for breakfast tomorrow? Before your board meeting? How did you know about my board meeting? Maya, please. Parallel coffee 7 a.m. Just give me 30 minutes. Something in her voice, a vulnerability I rarely heard, made me agree. Fine. 30 minutes. Thank you. She hung up before I could ask any more questions. I stared at the phone, puzzled. Vanessa didn't do vulnerable. She didn't say please or thank you to me. Whatever she wanted to discuss had shaken her usual confidence. My laptop pinged with an email from Elena. Reviewed your presentation. Impressive work. Made a few suggestions in the attached version. One more thing you should know. Chen Innovations has made a direct offer to several key Westlake engineers, offering significant signing bonuses if they jump ship. They're trying to strip our talent regardless of the acquisition outcome. Thought. You should be prepared. I read the email twice, anger building with each word. This was my father's style. If he couldn't buy what he wanted, he'd try to hollow it out from the inside. I'd seen it happen with other acquisition targets that had initially resisted. Well, two could play that strategy. I opened a new email and drafted a message to Marcus Rivera, the investor who'd shown interest in Horizon Solutions months ago, but had hesitated to commit. Marcus, I'd like to revisit our discussion about investment in Horizon Solutions. As you may have heard, I've recently become majority shareholder of Westlake Systems. I'm implementing a strategic partnership between the companies that will significantly expand our market reach. I believe this addresses the scalability concerns you raised during our last meeting. I'd appreciate the opportunity to present the updated business plan at your earliest convenience. I hit send, then turned back to Elena's suggestions. I worked until my eyes burned, refining arguments, strengthening data points, preparing for every possible objection. Tomorrow would be a turning point, not just for Westlake and Horizon, but for me personally. I was stepping into a role I'd never sought, challenging people with decades more experience, risking humiliation on a much larger scale than any dinner party mockery. But for the first time, I wasn't fighting just to prove my worth to a family that had already decided my value. I was fighting for something bigger, for Uncle James's vision, for Elena's brilliant team, for all the users who needed technology that adapted to them rather than forcing them to adapt to it. As I finally crawled into bed, exhausted but prepared, I realized something important had shifted inside me. I was no longer just reacting to Vanessa's plans or my father's dismissals. I was moving forward with my own vision, on my own terms. Uncle James had been right all along. I was stronger than they knew. More importantly, I was stronger than I'd known. Morning arrived too soon, gray light filtering through my blinds as my alarm jolted me awake. Despite the few hours of sleep, I felt strangely energized. Today was the day everything would change, one way or another. I dressed in my new suit, applied light makeup, and styled my hair in a sleek professional knot. The woman in the mirror looked confident, capable, ready for battle. I barely recognized myself. Parallel Coffee was busy with the morning rush when I arrived. Vanessa was already there, immaculate as always, but with subtle signs of strain around her eyes. 2 coffee cups sat on the table in front of her. "You're on time," she noted as I sat down. "And you look different." "Professional, you mean?" I accepted the coffee she pushed toward me. "What's this about, Vanessa?" She glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers, then leaned forward. Father is planning to contest Uncle James's will. He's hired Jensen Wallace. The name sent a chill through me. Jensen Wallace was my father's nuclear option, the attorney he called when he wanted to completely destroy an opponent. On what grounds? Undue influence, mental incapacity, whatever it takes. Vanessa's voice was low, urgent. He's convinced Uncle James wasn't thinking clearly when he made those changes to his will. That's ridiculous. Uncle James was perfectly sound of mind. I know that. You know that. But Jensen will find experts willing to testify otherwise. She met my gaze directly. He'll drag Uncle James's memory through the courts. It won't be pretty. Why are you telling me this? Vanessa hesitated. Because it's wrong. Uncle James deserves better than having his final wishes questioned because Father didn't like them. I studied my sister, trying to decipher her unexpected allegiance. I thought you'd support anything that got you the Westlake acquisition. This isn't about Westlake anymore. She looked down at her cup. Last night, I found some old correspondence between Father and Uncle James. Letters from years ago, arguing about the direction of Chen Innovations. Uncle James wanted to develop technologies with social impact. Father called it sentimental. Distraction from the bottom line. That sounds familiar, I murmured. The thing is, Uncle James was right. The specific technologies he wanted to develop, adaptive interfaces, accessibility tools. She looked up at me. The exact things you're working on now, the things I dismissed as niche and charitable. Understanding dawned. You're saying history is repeating itself. Vanessa nodded. Uncle James saw himself in you. That's why he left you those shares. Not to spite Father, but because he believed in your vision the way no one believed in his. The revelation settled over me like a weight and a release all at once. Uncle James hadn't just been kind to his overlooked niece. He'd recognized a shared purpose, a continuation of what he'd tried to build. So what now? I asked. Father isn't going to back down just because it's wrong. No, he won't. Vanessa straightened her shoulders. But I might be able to convince him that a protracted legal battle would be worse for Chen Innovations than a strategic partnership with Westlake. I blinked in surprise. You'd support a partnership? I've reviewed your proposal. The numbers are compelling. She offered a small, almost apologetic smile. I might have underestimated the market potential of accessibility technology. The admission, so unexpected from my always certain sister, left me momentarily speechless. I can't promise anything, Vanessa continued. Father is furious, but I'll try to make him see reason before he does something that harms everyone involved. Thank you, I said simply. She nodded, then glanced at her watch. You should go. You don't want to be late for your board meeting. As I stood to leave, she caught my wrist. Maya, good luck. Another surprise, perhaps the biggest yet. My sister, wishing me well in a venture that directly opposed her original plans. I nodded my thanks and headed for the door, my mind spinning with this unexpected turn of events. Whatever happened at the board meeting, whatever my father decided to do, one thing had become crystal clear. The path forward wasn't about defeating my family or proving them wrong. It was about building something they had failed to see the value in, something that mattered beyond profit margins and market share. As I walked toward the Westlake offices, Seattle's skyline rose before me, no longer a distant constellation, but a landscape of possibilities within reach. Today marked the beginning of that journey, not as the overlooked Chen daughter, but as Maya Chen, architect of my own future. The Westlake Systems headquarters gleamed like a fortress of glass and steel in the morning light. I stood on the sidewalk across the street, taking in the 12-story building with its sleek modern architecture and prominent logo. Employees streamed through the revolving doors, laptops tucked under arms, coffee cups in hand, unaware that their company's future hung in the balance. I checked my reflection in a nearby window. The charcoal suit Zoe had convinced me to buy fit perfectly, projecting confidence and authority without trying to mimic Vanessa's intimidating corporate style. My hair was pulled back in a sleek knot, makeup subtle but polished. I looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom, or at least someone who wouldn't be immediately dismissed. Elena had texted earlier. Board assembled. Winters in rare form. I'll meet you in lobby. I took a deep breath and crossed the street, joining the flow of employees entering the building. The lobby was impressive. Soaring ceilings, modern art, installations, a massive reception desk staffed by 3 perfectly groomed receptionists. So different from my cramped co-working space with its mismatched furniture and communal coffee maker. Elena spotted me immediately, detaching herself from a group near the elevators to meet me. Maya, good morning. Her handshake was firm, professional, but I caught the flash of nervous excitement in her eyes. Ready for this? As I'll ever be, I replied, keeping my voice low. Any last-minute surprises I should know about? She guided me toward a private elevator bank. The entire executive team has been invited to join halfway through the meeting. Not standard procedure for a new shareholder introduction. Robert Winter's idea? Almost certainly. He wants to present a united front. Elena swiped her keycard and the elevator doors slid open. Also, there's been a development with the Chen Innovations offer. My stomach tightened. What kind of development? They've increased their bid, significantly. It was delivered by courier this morning. The elevator began its smooth ascent, and your father is here. That stopped me cold. My father is in the building? Elena nodded grimly. Waiting in the executive lounge on the same floor as the boardroom. Apparently, he wants to be available for immediate discussions following the board's decision. I fought to maintain my composure. My father's presence complicated things. He wouldn't be here unless he was confident of victory, or prepared to force one. One more thing. Elena handed me a tablet. The latest user analytics from our accessibility features. Not in your presentation, but might be useful. I glanced at the screen, quickly absorbing the data. Usage metrics for Westlake's accessibility tools were higher than reported in the public documentation, much higher. These numbers are impressive. Why aren't they highlighted in the company reports? They're categorized under specialized implementations rather than core features. Elena's expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the frustration beneath. Makes them easier to dismiss as niche applications. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area with floor-to-ceiling. Windows overlooking Puget Sound. A young man in a perfectly tailored suit approached immediately. Ms. Chen, I'm Adam, Mr. Winter's executive assistant. The board is assembled and waiting for you. His smile was professional but cool. May I take your coat? I handed him my trench coat, grateful I'd invested in the suit beneath it. Thank you, Adam. Is there somewhere I can review my materials for a moment before we begin? Of course. The preparatory room is just this way. He led us to a small but elegant conference room adjacent to the main boardroom. The board will be ready for you in 5 minutes. After he left, I turned to Elena. Who on the board is likely to be receptive to our approach? Dr. Mei Lin, head of the Technical Advisory Committee. She's always supported the accessibility work but was overruled on resource allocation. Elena lowered her voice further. And possibly Diane Schultz. She was close to James Chen, though she's been careful not to show her hand since his passing. I nodded, making mental notes. Anyone I should be particularly wary of? Besides Winters? Thomas Garrett. He's had his eye on a Chen Innovations executive position for years. This acquisition would likely secure it for him. 5 minutes wasn't much time to absorb these additional insights, but it helped to know the landscape I was walking into. I reviewed my presentation one last time, adjusting a few points to address the increased bid. Adam reappeared precisely, on schedule. Ms. Chen, they're ready for you now. Elena gave my arm a quick, supportive squeeze. I'll be in the executive session after. I followed Adam into a large boardroom dominated by a massive mahogany table. 10 people sat around it, expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Robert Winters occupied the head of the table, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of tan that suggested regular golfing trips to warmer climates. He stood as I entered. Ms. Chen, welcome to Westlake Systems. Please, join us. His gesture indicated a chair halfway down the table. Not quite an insult, but certainly not a position of authority. I smiled pleasantly and instead moved to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table from Winters. Thank you for accommodating my schedule, Mr. Winters. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face at my seat choice, but he recovered quickly. Allow me to introduce the board. He went around the table, naming each member along with their role. I noted Dr. Lin, a petite woman with sharp eyes who studied me with open curiosity, and Diane Schultz, who offered me a small, almost imperceptible nod. Thomas Garrett, by contrast, didn't bother to hide his skepticism, his arms crossed firmly over his chest. Now, Ms. Chen, Winters continued once introductions were complete, we understand from Patricia Hendricks that you've inherited James Chen's shares in Westlake. While we're all very sorry for your loss, there are pressing matters that require resolution, specifically the acquisition offer from Chen Innovations. Yes, I've reviewed the offer, I said calmly, and the increased bid delivered this morning. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Apparently, not everyone had been informed of the new bid. You've been thorough, Winters commented, a note of grudging respect in his voice. Then you understand the generous terms being offered. The board has conditionally approved the acquisition, pending majority shareholder consent. We'd like to finalize the agreement today if possible. I appreciate the board's diligence, I said, opening my laptop. However, before we discuss the Chen Innovations offer, I'd like to present an alternative vision for Westlake's future. One that I believe offers greater long-term value for the company, its employees, and its shareholders. Winters frowned. Ms. Chen, with all due respect, you've only just become a shareholder. The board has been working on this acquisition for months. We've done extensive due diligence. And I've done mine, I countered smoothly. As the majority shareholder, I believe it's in everyone's interest to consider all options before making a decision that will fundamentally alter Westlake's future. Dr. Lin leaned forward. I'd be interested in hearing Ms. Chen's perspective. She does represent the controlling interest. A few others nodded, some reluctantly. Winters clearly recognized he couldn't simply dismiss me without appearing unreasonable. Very well. Please proceed, Ms. Chen, but I must emphasize that time is of the essence. I connected my laptop to the room's display system, and my title slide appeared on the wall screen, Westlake Systems, Reclaiming Leadership in Accessibility Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Westlake Systems began with a bold vision, making technology accessible to everyone, regardless of ability. That vision drove innovation, attracted top talent, and built a company respected across the industry. I advanced to the next slide, showing Westlake's original mission statement alongside metrics from its early years. What you may not realize is that this vision remains economically viable and increasingly valuable in today's market. For the next 20 minutes, I outlined my proposal in detail. I presented market analyses showing the growing demand for accessible technology, not just among users with disabilities, but in enterprise environments where adaptability translated to productivity. I showed integration points between Westlake's accessibility framework and Horizon's adaptive interfaces, demonstrating how the combined technologies could create a universal design system superior to anything currently on the market. I highlighted the achievements of Westlake's understaffed accessibility division, using Elena's latest analytics to show the impact of their work. And I presented financial projections for a strategic partnership between Westlake, Horizon Solutions, and yes, even Chen Innovations, a three-way collaboration that would expand market reach without sacrificing Westlake's core identity. Conclusion, I said, advancing to my final slide. Selling to Chen Innovations offers a quick win for shareholders, but partnership offers sustainable growth, technological leadership, and the preservation of Westlake's pioneering vision. That's the legacy James Chen believed in when he entrusted me with his shares. It's the future I'm asking you to consider today. I closed my laptop and faced the board directly. The room was silent for a moment, expressions ranging from thoughtful to skeptical. Dr. Lin was nodding slightly. Thomas Garrett looked distinctly uncomfortable. Robert Winters cleared his throat. An impressive presentation, Ms. Chen. Your enthusiasm is admirable. However, there are practical considerations you may not fully appreciate. The Chen Innovations offer provides immediate, guaranteed value for our shareholders. Your proposal, while intriguing, involves substantially more risk. All innovation involves risk, I responded. But consider the risk of the alternative. If Westlake is absorbed into Chen Innovations, its accessibility technology will be dismantled and repurposed for enterprise applications. The company loses its differentiation in the market and becomes just another subsidiary in a corporate portfolio. That's speculation, Garrett interjected. Chen Innovations has assured us they value Westlake's technology portfolio. They value parts of it, I corrected. I've seen the integration plans, Mr. Garrett. They specifically designate Westlake's accessibility features as legacy products to be phased out over 18 months. Several board members exchanged glances. This detail apparently hadn't been shared with everyone. Diane Schultz spoke for the first time. Is this true, Robert? The accessibility technology is being phased out? Winters shifted uncomfortably. Certain specialized applications may be reprioritized as part of normal portfolio management. That's standard in any acquisition. It's not standard for Westlake, Schultz said firmly. That technology is our foundation. James would never have approved its dismantling. With all due respect to James's memory, Winters said, his patience visibly thinning, we have a responsibility to our shareholders to maximize value. The Chen Innovations offer represents a 40% premium over current market valuation. Ms. Chen's proposal, while well-intentioned, doesn't offer comparable certainty. Actually, I interjected, I've secured preliminary commitment from Marcus, Rivera's investment group, to fund the partnership approach at a valuation comparable to Chen's offer. The term sheet was finalized this morning. I handed copies to Winters and the board secretary. You'll find the financial terms quite competitive. The surprise in the room was palpable. Marcus had come through with even more favorable terms than I'd hoped, impressed by the comprehensive strategy I'd presented after my meeting with Elena. Winters skimmed the document, his expression hardening. This appears to be in order, but it doesn't change the fundamental question. Chen Innovations is an established industry leader with proven integration capabilities. Horizon Solutions is, well, unproven. That's why I'm proposing a partnership, not an acquisition, I explained patiently. Westlake maintains its independence while collaborating with both Horizon and Chen Innovations to expand market reach. Everyone wins. Everyone except those who were counting on this acquisition, Garrett muttered, not quite under his breath. Dr. Lin turned toward him. Is that what this is about, Thomas? Your position at Chen Innovations? Before he could respond, the boardroom doors opened. Adam appeared with a carefully neutral expression. Mr. Winters, the executive team is assembled as requested. Winters checked his watch. Right on schedule. Please send them in. The executive team filed in, 6 people in total, including Elena, who gave me an encouraging nod as she took her place along the wall. The others regarded me with varying degrees of curiosity and wariness. For those who haven't met her, this is Maya Chen, James Chen's niece, and our new majority shareholder, Winters announced. She's presented an alternative to the Chen Innovations acquisition we've been working toward. Before we proceed further, I've invited the executive team to provide their professional assessment of the practicalities involved. It was a tactical move, bringing in executives who'd been working toward the acquisition for months. They would naturally favor the path they'd already invested in, but Winters had made a critical miscalculation. "I welcome the executives' perspectives," I said calmly. "In fact, I've already consulted with Elena Martinez about the technical feasibility of my proposal." Elena stepped forward. "That's correct. Ms. Chen's integration plan for the accessibility framework and Horizon's adaptive interfaces is not only feasible, but represents a significant advance over our current approach." Winters frowned. "Ms. Martinez, you were not authorized to share company information with outside parties." "With respect, sir, Ms. Chen is our majority shareholder, not an outside party," Elena replied evenly. "And as head of the accessibility division, I have an obligation to provide accurate technical assessments when asked." Another executive, a man I recognized from the org chart as the CFO, cleared his throat. "If I may, the financial projections in Ms. Chen's presentation appear sound. The partnership approach she's outlined could potentially yield greater long-term value than the acquisition, particularly if the Rivera investment materializes as indicated." Winters' expression darkened. This clearly wasn't going according to his plan. "Jeff, you've spent months on the Chen Innovations deal structure. Are you suggesting we abandon that work?" "I'm suggesting we consider all viable options, as is our fiduciary duty," the CFO replied diplomatically. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. What Winters had intended as a show of unified executive support was fracturing into genuine debate. Dr. Lin tapped her pen thoughtfully against the table. "I move that we table the vote on the Chen Innovations offer until we've had time to properly evaluate Ms. Chen's proposal. Say, 1 week?" "Seconded," Diane Schultz said promptly. Winters looked like he might object, but the momentum had turned. "Very well," he said tightly. "We'll reconvene next Wednesday to vote on both proposals. In the meantime, Maya, I expect full transparency on your discussions with Rivera's group and any other potential partners." "Of course," I agreed. "I'm happy to work with Jeff and his team to address any questions about the financial structuring." As the meeting broke up, I remained seated, allowing the board members and executives to file out first. Several stopped to introduce themselves more personally, including Dr. Lin, who gripped my hand firmly and said, "James would be proud," before departing. Elena lingered behind, ostensibly gathering materials, until we were the only two left in the room. "That went better than expected," she murmured. "Thanks to your support," I acknowledged. "Winters didn't look happy about your intervention." Elena shrugged. "I've been waiting years for someone to challenge the direction we've been heading, worth whatever heat comes my way." She glanced toward the door. "You should know, your father is still in the executive lounge. Winters is with him now." I nodded, gathering my things. "I expected as much. Better to face him here than have him show up at my apartment later." "Want backup?" I appreciated the offer but shook my head. "This is a family matter. But thank you, Elena, for everything today." She nodded, understanding. "I'll be at my desk if you need anything. 5th floor, East Wing." After she left, I took a moment to center myself. The meeting had gone reasonably well, better than I'd dared hope. I hadn't secured victory, but I'd gained time and perhaps some allies on the board. Now came the harder confrontation. I made my way to the executive lounge, where a polite receptionist directed me to a private meeting room at the back. I knocked once, then entered without waiting for a response. My father sat in an armchair by the window, Winters standing beside him. They both looked up as I entered, their conversation cutting off abruptly. "Maya," my father said, his voice deceptively calm. "Robert was just updating me on your presentation." "Richard, I'll give you some privacy." Winters said, moving toward the door. As he passed me, he added quietly, "Consider carefully before you reject an established partner. For an untested vision, Miss Chen." When the door closed behind him, my father gestured to the chair opposite his. "Sit." I remained standing. "I prefer to stand." His jaw tightened at the small defiance. "You've created quite a situation, undermining months of careful negotiation with a half-baked partnership scheme. It's not half-baked. It's fully developed, financially sound, and better aligned with Westlake's core mission than your acquisition plan." "Our acquisition plan," he corrected sharply. "Chen Innovations, your family's company. The company that discarded my division, dismissed my ideas, and is now trying to do the same to Westlake's accessibility technology," I countered. "I'm not opposing this acquisition out of spite, Dad. I'm proposing a better alternative for everyone involved, including Chen Innovations." My father stood abruptly, his patience visibly fraying. "Enough games, Maya. What do you really want? A position at Chen Innovations? A larger settlement? Name your price." "I don't have a price," I said quietly. "I believe in what I'm building. Uncle James believed in it too. That's why he left me those shares." "James was making a point," my father snapped. "He was always making points. Always the idealist who never understood business realities." "He understood them perfectly," I disagreed. "He just valued different things, like making technology that actually helps people, not just shareholders." My father paced the room, frustration evident in every movement. "Do you have any idea what you're risking? This acquisition is critical to Chen Innovations' growth strategy. The board is expecting results. Your sister's reputation is on the line." "I'm aware. That's why I offered a partnership instead of outright rejection. Chen Innovations still benefits, just not by dismantling what makes Westlake special." He stopped pacing and faced me directly. "I've spoken with Jensen Wallace. We're prepared to contest James's will if necessary, on grounds of undue influence." Though Vanessa had warned me, hearing it directly from my father still stung. "You would drag Uncle James's name through the courts? Question his mental capacity? All to force an acquisition he clearly didn't want?" "To protect the family company," he corrected. "To ensure the Chen legacy continues." "This is about ego, not legacy," I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger building inside me. "You can't stand that Uncle James saw value in what I'm building when you never did. You can't accept that he trusted me with his shares when you never thought I was capable of anything significant." My father's expression hardened. "You're in over your head, Maya. The board may be intrigued by your presentation today, but they'll recognize the risks eventually. Westlake needs Chen Innovations' resources and market position. Westlake needs to remember what made it successful in the first place," I countered. "Innovation that serves users other companies ignore. That's the vision I'm fighting to preserve." We stared at each other across the elegantly appointed room, the gulf between our values clearer than it had ever been. My father saw the world in terms of market share and shareholder value. I saw it in terms of impact and innovation. Uncle James had seen it my way too, I realized. That was why we had clashed with the family for so long. "1 week," my father said finally. "You have 1 week before the board votes. Use it wisely, Maya. Consider the consequences of opposing your family on this." "I have considered them," I said quietly. "I've had years to consider what happens when I don't align with the family vision. The difference now is that I have the power to choose a different path." My father's eyes narrowed. "Power is temporary. Remember that." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "Sunday dinner. Your mother expects you to be there. Family matters should be discussed within the family." Without waiting for my response, he left, the door closing firmly behind him. I sank into the chair he'd vacated, the adrenaline of the confrontation leaving me suddenly exhausted. My father hadn't shouted or made explicit threats, but the message was clear. stand down, or face consequences. A week. I had a week to solidify the partnership proposal, secure additional board support, and prepare for whatever countermoves my father and Vanessa might attempt. The path ahead was daunting, but for the first time, it felt like my path, one I was choosing rather than one I was desperately trying to prove myself worthy of. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "How did it go?" I typed back, "Board considering. Both options. Vote in 1 week. Dad threatening legal action." Her response was immediate. "War room at my place tonight, 7 p.m., bringing reinforcements." Despite everything, I smiled. I might be challenging my blood family, but I wasn't alone. I had allies who believed in the same vision: Elena, Zoe, Marcus Rivera, possibly even board members like Dr. Lynn and Diane Schultz. And somewhere, I like to think, Uncle James was watching with approval. I stood and gathered my things, ready, to leave the executive sanctuary and return to my modest office. The week ahead would be a battle, but it was one worth fighting. Not to defeat my family, but to build something they had failed to see the value in. Something that mattered beyond profit margins and market share. As I reached the door, my phone rang. "Vanessa." I hesitated, then answered. "I hear you made quite an impression on the Westlake board," she said without preamble. "Word travels fast. In this case, directly from father." A pause. "He's furious, by the way." "I noticed," I said dryly. "Are you calling to add your own displeasure to the mix?" Another pause. "Actually, I'm calling to suggest coffee, tomorrow morning. There are aspects to this situation you may not fully appreciate." I frowned, suspicious of the neutral tone. Such as? Such as the fact that father has already drafted the legal documents contesting Uncle James's will. They'll be filed tomorrow afternoon unless something changes his mind. My grip tightened on the phone. That's remarkably fast work. "He's been planning this contingency since the funeral," Vanessa said flatly. "Jensen Wallace doesn't draft complex legal challenges overnight." The implication was clear. My father had anticipated Uncle James's betrayal before anyone knew about the will. "Why are you telling me this?" Vanessa sighed, a sound of genuine weariness. "Because it's wrong, and you deserve a chance to prepare. Coffee, 7 a.m., the place near your office. I'll tell you everything I know." She hung up before I could respond, leaving me staring at the phone in confusion. First her warning this morning, now this. Vanessa, who had always been our father's perfect lieutenant, was suddenly providing insider information to his opponent, to me. Something had shifted in the family dynamic, something I didn't fully understand. But right now, I needed all the information I could get. If Vanessa was offering insights into my father's strategy, I couldn't afford to refuse, whatever her motivation might be. I left the executive lounge and made my way to the elevators, nodding politely to employees who had no idea their company's fate was being contested in meeting rooms and family arguments. As the elevator descended, I mentally cataloged what I'd need for the week ahead: financial projections, legal counsel, board member outreach, technical integration plans with Elena's team. The enormity of the challenge ahead was daunting. I was one person standing against a corporate machine, armed only with a vision and whatever allies I could gather. But for the first time in my professional life, I wasn't fighting just to prove my worth to a family that had already decided my value. I was fighting for something bigger, for Uncle James's legacy, for Elena's brilliant team, for all the users who needed technology that adapted to them rather than forcing them to adapt to it. As I stepped out of the Westlake building into the Seattle drizzle, I felt a curious sense of peace beneath the anxiety. Whatever happened next, whether I succeeded in preserving my vision or lost to my father's legal maneuvers, I was finally standing firmly in my own truth, on my own terms. Uncle James had given me more than shares in a company. He'd given me permission to be exactly who I was, to value what I valued, without apology or compromise. And that, I realized as I walked toward my car, was a gift no one could take away. Not even Richard Chen with all his corporate power and legal resources. I was finally free to succeed or fail on my own terms. Now I just had to make sure it was success. 1 year later, I stood on the stage at the Pacific Northwest Tech Summit, watching as attendees filled the auditorium. The same conference where, years earlier, I'd sat in the back row, desperately hoping to make connections that might help my struggling startup. Now I was the keynote speaker. Behind me, the screen displayed our new logo, Adaptive Horizon, the merged entity born from the partnership between Westlake Systems and Horizon Solutions. No acquisition, no erasure, a true collaboration that preserved the best of both companies. In the front row sat Elena, now our Chief Technology Officer, alongside her expanded accessibility team. Beside her was Marcus Rivera, whose investment had proven crucial during those tense negotiations. And at the end of the row, surprisingly, sat Vanessa. Our father had followed through on his threat to contest Uncle James's will. The legal battle had been ugly, with claims about Uncle James's mental state splashed across industry publications. But Patricia Hendricks had indeed been thorough. Uncle James's video statements and meticulous documentation left no room for doubt about his intentions. In the end, my father had lost more than the legal challenge. He'd lost standing in the business community when the details became public. Several board members at Chen Innovations had questioned his judgment in pursuing such a personal vendetta. And Vanessa, in a move that shocked everyone, had testified on my behalf, confirming that Uncle James had been of sound mind and deeply committed to accessibility technology. The split with our father had been final after that. Vanessa had resigned from Chen Innovations 2 months later, citing philosophical differences about the company's direction. She now ran her own consulting firm and, somewhat miraculously, had become one of Adaptive Horizon's strategic advisors. Our relationship remained complex, too much history to ever be simple. But we'd found a new understanding, a professional respect that occasionally hinted at the possibility of something warmer. As the lights dimmed and the introducer took the podium, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Not just the dramatic confrontation in the Westlake boardroom or the legal battle that followed, but the years of quiet work before that, building something valuable when no one was looking, believing in a vision that others dismissed. It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, the introducer was saying, Maya Chen, founder of Horizon Solutions and CEO of Adaptive Horizon, whose universal design framework is revolutionizing how we think about technology accessibility. I stepped forward to applause, adjusting the microphone as the room quieted. Thank you for that kind introduction. A few years ago, I sat in this very conference center at the back of a much smaller room, listening to industry leaders talk about the future of technology. Not once did they mention accessibility. Not once did they acknowledge the millions of users being left behind by innovations designed for a narrow definition of typical. I paused, letting the words settle. Today, I want to share how universal design isn't just the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. How technology that adapts to human needs, rather than forcing humans to adapt to technology, creates better products for everyone. As I moved through my presentation, I spotted a familiar face slipping into the back of the room. Uncle James wouldn't have wanted the spotlight, but I like to think he would have appreciated the work we were doing, continuing the vision he'd believed in when no one else did. After the presentation, during the reception, Vanessa approached with 2 glasses of champagne. She handed one to me with a small, almost shy smile. Congratulations. That was impressive. Thanks for coming, I said, accepting the glass. I wasn't sure you would. Wouldn't miss it. She glanced around at the crowded reception. You've built something remarkable here, Maya. Something that matters. The simple acknowledgement from the sister who had once mocked my charity case of a business meant more than I cared to admit. We've built it, I corrected. Your strategic Guidance has been invaluable. Vanessa shook her head. I came in at the end. This was your vision all along. We sipped our champagne in surprisingly comfortable silence, watching the room full of industry leaders networking with our team. The accessibility experts who had once been relegated to undermanned departments and undersupported initiatives. Have you spoken to Dad? I asked finally. Vanessa's expression tightened slightly. Monthly dinners. He's adjusting. The company's new direction isn't what he envisioned, but the board is satisfied with the performance. I nodded, unsurprised. Richard Chen would never admit he'd been wrong, but he was pragmatic enough to adapt when necessary. He asks about you sometimes, Vanessa added, watching me carefully. In his way. I knew what she meant. Not direct questions, but oblique references, monitoring my success from a distance. Tell him I'm doing well, if you think it would matter. It matters, she said simply. Elena approached, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but the team from Microsoft is ready for our meeting, and they're particularly interested in hearing about the education applications. I'll be right there. As Elena moved away, I turned back to Vanessa. Duty calls. Go be impressive, she said with a genuine smile. It's what you do best. As I followed Elena toward the meeting room, I glanced back at my sister, the golden child who had once seemed to shine so much brighter than me. We had both changed in ways I never could have anticipated. Perhaps that was the most surprising outcome of all this. Not the business success or industry recognition, but the discovery that people could grow, could see each other anew if given the chance. My phone buzzed with a message from Zoe. Reuters wants an interview about the education initiative. Also, your 3-0 with the accessibility team is confirmed. I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. The day was full, the work meaningful, the future bright with possibility. Not because I had finally proven my worth to a family that had dismissed me, but because I had built something valuable on my own terms, something that would help countless people I'd never meet. And really, that had been the point all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.